Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The mayor has called the meeting to order. Mayor Davey.
Here.
Councilmember Kaplan.
He stepped out for a minute.
Councilmember Laredo is absent tonight. Vice Mayor London. Councilmember McCormick.
Here.
Councilmember Moss.
Here.
Councilmember Segurola.
Here.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, we do have a quorum. Please have an invocation from Tony Gowdy with Key Biscayne Community Church.
Nice. Tony, we can't hear you. Still muted. There you go. Try it again. Can you hear us, Tony? Yeah. We can't hear you. Try it again. You want to log out and log back in?
Can you hear me now? Now you can hear me.
Now we can hear you.
All right, great. Sorry for the delay. Anyways, I just wanted to tell you how honored I am that you would ask me to pray for the meeting today. I want you to know that how grateful I am for all the council members, all the servicemen that we have in our community for doing everything that we can do to stay together, to stick together. And the book of Matthew, chapter 5, verse 9 says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God." And I really look at our peacemakers on Key Biscayne, and I know that we're blessed as a community. I'm blessed as an individual. We're blessed as a church. So thank you guys. But before we start the meeting, let's pray. Well, God, thank you so much for today. Thank you for the opportunity to serve your sons and your daughters. Thank you for the opportunity to serve the community at Key Biscayne. We pray that you be honored in every decision made tonight. We pray that you be spoken to first before decisions are made. We pray that you be glorified. We pray that the needs of the people of Key Biscayne be put first and foremost, and that we become less so that you can become more. We know that you've given us a great opportunity to live in a place like Key Biscayne. To call this place our home is such an amazing blessing from you. And we don't take that blessing lightly. We know that it carries much weight with it. And we're going to do our best to make this, to leave Key Biscayne better than it was when we got here. I really believe that about each and every council member, each and every, Chief Lang and Chief Press and Todd. And I just believe that these people care about this community, that they want to see this community flourish, that they want to see this community thrive. And they want to be an example to communities around the nation on how to do things and how to do them right. So, God, we love you and we thank you. And I pray this in Jesus' mighty and holy name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Tony.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item on the agenda, Mr. Mayor, is brief comments by council.
Right. as again, I know I've been a broken record on this, but folks, we've got to get better. Our COVID numbers continue to go up. So when you're out, you know, we've all got masks here on the dais so that when we walk away, we're wearing a mask, we're maintaining social distancing. I would ask the rest of the community when we're doing this, we're not just doing this for ourselves, but we're doing this for everybody else within our community. Look out for one another, wear masks, maintain your social distancing, wash your hands thoroughly and often. You know the routine, but I think we've gotten a little lax. So I really want everybody to rededicate themselves to doing this. We're seeing too many cases. We had more cases in January than we had in any other month, and we have to get this thing under control. Anybody else have comments? Okay, next item. Public comments.
Is public comments.
Pete, what do we have?
We have CC Sanchez signed up to speak.
Okay. Ceci, if you are if you are a hired consultant or village employee and or engaged in lobbying activities and or representative of any organization, please state you are so for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Well, I'm a lobbyist for the village.
Okay. No.
All right. All that I asking, we have.
State your name and address, please.
Cecile Sanchez, 260 Cypress Drive, Key Biscayne. I would beg and ask you, please, to approve what we have planned for the enhancement of Crandon Boulevard. It's a long time overdue. Hopefully later on we can continue on. We plan to go all the way to West Mashta. Then there's going to be a shorter leg all the way to the state park. I hope you support this. It is for the benefit of all. And we have grand plans, and we could not do this if you had not finally approved our horticulturalist that I hope, Carlos Sanchez, no relation to me, I hope you get him to talk to you. I don't know if today or any other day, and ask questions. He is our greatest asset for the beautification, and I thank you.
Thank you, Ceci. Thank you to everybody on the beautification board. We appreciate all your work. Who's next?
I have nobody signed up currently, sir.
Okay, you want to just give out the directions? Oh,
no, I do have.
I see Claire.
Mrs. London, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, state your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening, Claire London, 736 Woodcrest Road. I'm also a member of the beautification group. And to save time, not to repeat what Ceci said, but we would really like it if you could consider seriously approving the budget amendment for landscaping. The 350,000 from last year did not get used. We would like to bring it forwards and do exactly as Ceci said. We'd like to do the entire median going to the state park, make it lush. We're keeping the trees, but we want to, Carlos, our horticulturist, who we love, we're very grateful for him. He's amazing. And we've been working with Carlos and Jake and our group. We came up with a plan. We almost completely agree, but it would look fantastic. We can also, with that money, do the harbor circles, which some of them are looking terrible. And on West Mashta, there are a few small traffic circles that are looking very tired. We would also like to do those. It would be fantastic. Ceci's right, long overdue. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else?
Mr. Mayor, I have no one else signed up for public comment.
Okay, you want to just give out the instructions on how to raise your hand or
Yes, sir.
Speak.
Ladies and gentlemen, watching us at home on channel 77 on Comcast, channel 99 on AT&T, or streaming from home. If you wish to speak on any topic to council, please dial the phone number of 305-365-7569. Then please enter the meeting ID of 231-627-8415. For those of you that are currently logged into our meeting, if you do wish to speak on any topic, please dial *9 or raise your hand within the application.
What do you got? Anybody?
No, sir. Nobody signed up to speak.
All right. Well, we've got another. Oh, what'd you do over there, Frank? Hold the. Okay, so let's move on. We've got another public comment section later this evening. If anybody joins in later and wants to make a comment. Moving on, Madam Clerk.
The next item, Mr. Mayor, is the agenda. Approvals, deferrals, additions, deletions, substitutions, withdrawals.
Okay, I know that Councilmember Laredo cannot be here this evening, so his item, which is 12B2, will be moved to the next meeting. If that's okay?
Yes.
Anybody else have any additions or deletions?
Yeah, I'd like to pull from the consent agenda the COVID expenses and have them for discussion.
Okay, so that will go, so that's B.
8B.
Not 8B will be moved. Okay, so right after the consent agenda. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Anybody else? Any additions, deletions? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? All right. Madam Clerk, next item.
The next item, Mr. Mayor, is a special presentation by Ryan Murray from ETC Institute presenting the 2020 Community Survey results.
Okay. Mr. Murray?
Yes. Thank you, Council, for having me here. I'm going to try to share my screen now, if we can bear with me. All right. Does everybody see that presentation? See the agenda?
Yes, it's there.
All right, great. So as the lady previously mentioned, my name's Ryan Murray. I'm with ETC Institute. We've conducted multiple surveys for Key Biscayne, working with Todd there for the city. But ETC's been around since about 1982, and we're really a national leader in market research for government organizations. So we do these surveys specifically for municipalities primarily, as well as county and state governments. But really the main goal and the purpose of our work is to help you all make better decisions through data or research. And tonight I'll go through the results of the 2020 survey. So we'll go through the purpose and the methodology of that survey. I'll give you the major findings, and then we'll summarize, and I'll take any questions at the end here. The purpose of our survey, including this one, and most of our surveys, are to objectively assess resident satisfaction with the delivery of services, and we've done just that. Beyond the obvious, assessing satisfaction, we measure trends from previous years. We also provide robust benchmarking databases. So we do a lot of work in Florida, specifically that South Florida area. So we have very comprehensive Florida benchmarkings as well as national benchmarkings to compare your results to. Beyond just some of the other basics, we help determine priorities for your community using analysis, again, based specifically on the survey results. And we did that by administering a 7-page survey to residents. Every household was randomly selected, so every residential address in the community had an opportunity to be selected to receive the survey. About 10 days after surveys began arriving in mailboxes, we began sending emails, following up with respondents who had not yet completed or returned their survey. Each survey took approximately 15 to 20 minutes to complete. We got 512 surveys, where our goal was 500, which is quite a number of surveys for a community the size of Key Biscayne. All of the results have a margin of error of about plus or minus 4.2% at the 95% level of confidence. So anything that we look at tonight, just keep in mind there is a margin of error to these results. Although very small, it does factor in primarily while we're looking at trends as well as benchmarking. But what that means is if we were to conduct the survey 100 more times, 95 out of 100 times, we're going to get these same results, plus or minus our 4.2% margin of error. We do ask a number of demographic questions to ensure the results do accurately reflect the makeup of the community. We had a great representation by age of household members. Same with the number of years lived in the village, and the representation of apartments or single-family homes or condominiums. We had a good breakdown there as well. Beyond just those simple demographic questions, one thing the ETC Institute always does with our survey research is we geocode the location of the home address of the respondent. So in order to submit either a survey by paper or online, Respondents are required to give a home address. If that address doesn't match our random sample, those survey results are not included in the final results. But what we do with that data as we're collecting surveys is we use it to ensure that the results aren't coming from one particular area of the community. And as you can see here, we have little red dots scattered all across the community, which tells us we have a really good representation of the village by area, not only some of those key demographic features, but also geographically. We want to make sure that's always the case in every research project that we conduct. Up front, everybody should be really pleased with the survey results. There's a lot to get into. We're going to go over the major findings this evening. The full report really details every single question, includes tabular results. We included maps for every Likert scale question possible. But overall, folks are really satisfied about their quality of life and the way things are going overall in the village of Key Biscayne. As we can see, almost every respondent, all but just a few respondents, indicated the village is an excellent, good place to live. 95% indicated that it was either excellent or good place to raise children. When we talk about setting the standard for the delivery of key village services, you rated above the U.S. average in 76% of the areas that were compared, and you rated 25 percentage points over the U.S. and the Florida averages for the overall quality of city services provided. So we may have thought, oh, hey, Key Biscayne got a really high rating when we were asked to rate the overall quality of services. But when we actually look at the benchmarks to really see where you do stack up, you're 25 percentage points above both of those averages, which is just phenomenal. The village also rated 25% above the U.S. average and 20% above the Florida average for the overall value received for tax dollars and fees. At the very end, or near the end of my presentation, we did ask a particular question regarding current tax rates and property tax rates, and folks are very pleased with what they're receiving for those taxes. As with every survey, there are priorities for improvements. It's not to say the city's doing poorly in any of these areas. These are just the areas that are of utmost importance to residents and will have the greatest impact in overall satisfaction ratings the next time you do your survey. Some of the key areas when it comes to overall categories, which I'll go through, are the overall quality of beach maintenance, adequacy of village street lighting, quality of traffic enforcement, which actually saw dramatic increases in satisfaction over the last survey, and overall traffic conditions within the community. So we have some issues with traffic and street lighting, but all those ratings actually saw increases since the previous survey. So they're still important. We should still continue to emphasize improvements in those areas. There were a couple areas as it relates to parks, building, planning, zoning, public works, a couple areas, and then police and fire services, just a couple of areas as well that we'll go through later on in this presentation. I want to talk about perceptions first, and I've highlighted 4 items at the top here. These are really the report card items as they work for me. I've been doing this for about 15 years. There's about 4 or 5 things that I look at first when I get a set of data. These are a few of them right here. And as long as I'm seeing numbers about above 80% or so, I'm understanding that the cities or the village is in a pretty good shape. What we're seeing here is just phenomenal. As you can see, almost no respondents gave any type of below average or poor rating to any of those top items. In fact, most respondents, 96% and above, gave excellent and good ratings to all of those items. Some of the items at the bottom there received relatively large groups of respondents indicating neutral responses, which means that you didn't make a positive impact and it wasn't a negative impact in that particular respondent's perception. So overall, we're doing very well here. And when I was talking about benchmarking earlier, if you see the 5th item from the bottom is the value received for tax dollars and fees, on the outset, we might think that the 62% is just really not where we want to be. But when we talk about national and regional benchmarking and how the village compares to those numbers, we actually see that the village is performing very well in that particular area, even though it is further down on the list here. Beyond just general perception items, here are the tangibles, the items where residents really have an opportunity to give you some remarks here. These are items that the city provides to just about every respondent. As we'll see later in these charts and some of the maps, the village is really equitably distributing services to all residents. There's not one area of town or the one area of the village who feels like they're underserved, but there are a few areas that came to be high priorities based on the lower levels of satisfaction and higher levels of importance. That's the quality of beach maintenance, the adequacy of street lighting, traffic enforcement, and traffic conditions within the community. These are some of the items that also received some of the largest numbers of dissatisfied and very dissatisfied numbers. So we did make an impact on a person's perception, and they were letting us know for these particular items. I wanted to go through some of the GIS maps as we've shaded those based on census block groups, I believe. Based on the mean ratings within those boundaries. As you can see, rating the village as a place to live, the city's really equitably serving all village residents, as we can tell here. The dark blue indicates that the average rating for all of those areas were excellent. Same with raised children. Again, 95% of respondents gave excellent or good ratings to this particular question. When we talk about some of the overall quality of services, we see some deviation from those very satisfied or those 5 responses and more of an average of 4 when we're talking about the overall quality of services, but still equitably providing those services. We'd be more concerned if we saw some yellow or orange areas in this particular chart. And then we get into our top priorities. This was really determined to be the top priority for improvement heading into 2021. There are some areas of the village who feel more strongly about this particular area. I'm guessing those areas with beaches. Adequacy of village street lighting. There are more areas of the village here that are less satisfied, not quite to the dissatisfied marks, but less satisfied than average about the adequacy of village street lighting, the second top priority. The third priority was overall quality of traffic enforcement, something that seems to be an issue for respondents village-wide. Same with the overall traffic conditions in the community. So these are just meant to give folks just a little bit of added analysis, a little bit different perspective on how the village as a whole rated these particular services. We're going to get into benchmarks now, and instead of kind of going through one slide slowly at a time, I wanted to pull out the items that are really your strengths and weaknesses. And when it comes to national comparisons, the item is listed there with how many percentage points you're above that national average. And then to the right, those weaknesses are how many percentage points you're below that national average. Significantly fewer items you were less than, but there were some really great signs here. Overall quality of customer service provided by employees, such a difficult item to obtain such a high rating for. You know, residents call your city employees, those front-facing employees, those customer-facing folks, and sometimes they throw them a curveball, or they throw them a question or a request or a complaint that the employee just can't fulfill. Maybe their hands are tied, or maybe it's just not the purview of the village to handle the particular request. When those situations occur, we know that, you know, the resident has left with a dissatisfied interaction with the village employees. But what we're seeing here is that, you know, for the most part, your employees are able to overcome those circumstances and really help and make a positive impact on the overall interaction. Some of the other key ones, as I mentioned earlier, some of those report card items is a place to live, raise children, visit, and retire, all significantly above the national averages. Same with overall quality of life and overall image of the villages. Just some of those perception items that really go a long way. On the comparative weaknesses sides, we see some major infrastructure items such as walking and biking trails, visibility of police in neighborhoods, another perception issue that can be easily overcome with strong communication and outreach. Quality of residential garbage collection, another item that is just difficult to tackle and pinpoint, something that individual surveys or reaching out to customers who've complained, maybe that would be a good way to start looking into the issues with that particular item. And then overall traffic conditions with the community, slightly below that national average. When we look at our local comparisons, we're talking about the Florida average, and we see a lot of other good ratings there as we look at our comparative strengths, and a lot of the same items when we're looking at our comparative weaknesses. So residential recycling collection, sewer wastewater services, the usefulness of the village website, which can always be difficult to overcome. It's useful for some while not useful for others. Enforcement of local traffic laws, which is one of our top priorities for improvements. And again, visibility of police in neighborhoods made its way up there. Right below that is the adequacy of city street lighting, another top priority for improvement moving into 2021. Here are how all of the benchmarkings break down, just to give you an idea. I'm sure you'll all have access to my presentation after this meeting, so I just wanted to make sure I provided these slides. Overall major categories of village services, only a few areas where you're significantly below. This is the Florida average, which is a better indicator of how well the village is really performing, in my opinion, given that our national averages, account for folks in New York State, Minnesota, Colorado, that face a lot of different issues than those folks in Florida. So I wanted to compare with these arrows how you're comparing to the Florida average here. So we're doing very well in a lot of these areas. Overall quality of residential garbage collection on this one, which was one of our top priorities for improvement. Same with adequacy of village street lighting, something that we definitely are struggling with this year. Village communication doing very well. Again, saw below average numbers on the usefulness of the village website, but again, I've done a lot of focus groups on that particular topic. What is useful for some is not useful for others, and hitting that median or that mode, where do we want to be with this website is a very difficult thing considering the diversity of the village itself. And then village parks doing very well. And then trends. So significant increases since 2018. We saw a lot of key increases in areas that I really would be surprised to see such a high increase in the overall traffic conditions within the community, plus 24 percentage points over last time. Communication by village officials to residents, likely due to COVID-19. I would assume that other item, traffic, is also related to COVID-19, folks staying home a little bit more. But quality and access to public education has increased. Traffic enforcement has increased, although that's a top priority for improvement. We're seeing top priorities for improvements on this list, which means that the cities actually the villages perform very well in these areas. It's just still very important to residents. Quality of sports fields and special events as a place to work. Code enforcement doing very well in a number of these areas since 2018. And only a few areas did we see any significant decreases in positive ratings since 2018. That's improving parking in the village, the installation of smart traffic signalization to improve traffic flow. It sounds like folks just aren't super into that at this point. Efforts to prevent crime. One bad media story at about the time or around the time that the surveys go out, and this can really tank this particular item. We did Dallas. We did a survey for Dallas just a couple of years ago. It was towards the end of the year, and I think that a giant news story released about the time the survey started to arrive about how this was the deadliest year in Dallas history. And they just saw this number tank, significantly higher decrease than what the village is seeing here. But there are just some very small items that saw decreases in satisfaction since 2018. Now, what we do is we're objectively assessing all these city services, but there's really a reason why we're doing it the way that we're doing it. And we want to understand how these services stack up to one another. But instead of just simply asking satisfaction and understanding general feelings of disdain or pleasure with particular village services, we need to understand which ones are most important. If somebody's extremely dissatisfied with the overall quality of special events offered by the village of Key Biscayne, we might think that's where we should funnel resources to. But as this chart shows us, only 2% of respondents indicated that it's one of the top 3 important items for leaders in the village of Key Biscayne to focus on over the next 2 years. So we want to put our eggs in the baskets where 1, satisfaction is below average, and 2, importance is above average. And if we can find those items that fall into that particular category, we can work our way towards increasing overall satisfaction with village services by hitting those items that are of most importance. So beyond just asking satisfaction, we asked respondents to rank most of these items, and we developed our important satisfaction analysis, which I'm sure many of you have seen before. In our reports, it's portrayed just a little bit differently. I prefer to highlight this list with kind of my signal of, the items at the top in pink are of the utmost importance, followed by those items in red. Those items in yellow or orange, that orange color, are those items that I think that if we don't continue to emphasize service level improvements in these particular items, they will become more important inherently, and they will become top priorities for improvement. The items in green should always be read as those items where service levels should be maintained, because the level of importance is likely always going to remain slightly below average to significantly below average. So what we see here are those top 4 items for improvement that I've already mentioned previously in my presentation. And the one that I think is really on the verge here is the quality of sewer maintenance or sewer wastewater services. And that's the one where we should definitely focus on increasing satisfaction levels because they are slightly below average, and then importance of those items will continue to rise if service levels continue to fall. When it comes to village parks, only a couple items made the top priorities list. Really, the quality of village facilities and services for teens. That was definitely the top priority for improvement as it relates to village parks, along with village walking and biking trails. I know that's a very rather expensive item, but even just letting residents know through the communication means that you know are successful, what the village has in store for the future, or what they plan for the future, or how they're combating current issues with that trail and walking system, can go a long way at quelling below average expectations. Availability of culture, activities, and arts, something that is likely going to be a top priority if we don't begin offering some items over the course of 2021 of no fault of the village, likely due to COVID-19. The availability of culture, activities, and arts is something that's just a little bit more difficult when we're trying to social distance and stay inside a little bit here. When we talk about a couple of those top priorities, here's the quality of village facilities for teens. Down at the bottom right-hand corner, we have one area of the village who's satisfied. The rest of the village is more neutral. And same with the quality of village walking and biking trails. We have just a couple areas of the village who we know are significantly less satisfied with this particular item than other areas. We did the same exercise for building, zoning, planning, and public works, and we determined that the overall quality of beaches was really the top priority for improvement. We saw this also in a previous slide. This is a significant number here, 0.351. Typically, anything over 2 is a very high priority for improvement. So anything verging on 3.5 or 4 is definitely something where we need to be focusing significant resources to increase the level of service in that particular area. The 2 areas in red are both high priorities, and then the enforcing cleanup of litter and debris on private property is also becoming an issue with residents, and we'll see where a couple of these areas are the biggest concern here. So overall quality of beaches is the biggest concern just in that northern part of the village. And water conservation programs appear to be an issue with everyone in the village for the most part. I didn't include the map for the enforcing the cleanup of litter and debris on property, but that is a village-wide issue as well, and something that the village should be focusing on. And here's the quality of residential recycling collection, the third top priority for this particular section. When we look at police and fire services, what we see is more alignment with the overall priorities for improvements. The village efforts to prevent crime, visibility of police in neighborhoods, enforcement of local traffic laws, those are our really top priorities. But beyond visibility in neighborhoods, visibility in retail areas is also an issue. So it's not something that folks are likely standing at their windows, or at least not a majority of residents are standing at their windows ensuring that patrol car is coming down their street or patrolling their commercial area on a regular basis. But again, using those communication methods that we know are most effective to let residents know how we're doing or how we are reacting to these survey results, how we are going to ensure that we have more patrols on the road is really important, if not more important than actually putting those wheels on the ground and getting those police officers out there. So that's a really important perception item as it relates to safety. Enforcement of local traffic laws appears to be a problem for residents village-wide. Visibility of police in neighborhoods is really focused on 2 major residential areas. Based on my understanding of the village, these aren't the most heavily populated residential areas, but very much so important when it comes to this particular service area. And then efforts to prevent crime is actually a complete inverse of our previous slide. So visibility of police in neighborhoods seems to be a larger issue on the east side, whereas village efforts to prevent crime is a larger issue on the west side. In the communication, we didn't have any top priorities for improvement, but if we don't get that village website figured out, eventually folks are going to continue to be dissatisfied with that, and it's going to continue to be something that the survey results show as a high priority for improvement. It's just barely on the edge here. That is best done typically through focus groups. We administer surveys occasionally that help communities address and combat some issues with their websites. But really that is something, in my professional opinion, you can usually leave the public out of. It's it's a community commodity website. Usually there are key services and functions that need to be in that website. It's a little bit different than if we were talking about, a water district's website or a Parks and Recreation organization's website. So there are great consultants out there that can really point the city or the village in the right direction if the village does so choose to find that route of website redesign if you haven't done so. And again, not that I have the background information for this, but if the village has recently updated or changed their website dramatically, that is likely why we're seeing lower levels of satisfaction here. Folks were stuck in their ways. They didn't like the changes that were made, and it will just take some time for them to get used to the changes that were made, if that's the case. When it comes to communication, I've been mentioning this throughout the presentation. I think it's really important to pay attention to the results to these next couple of slides. We asked respondents to check all the ways they currently get news and information about the village. 60% of respondents indicated they get email updates or the Village Connect. Another 60% or so said local newspapers, and about 58% of respondents said word of mouth, basically friends, family, and neighbors. So we want to make sure that the village is the primary source of information, which they seem to be, or a vast majority of respondents, 6 out of 10, are indicating that they're getting their information straight from the village. While other means such as the village website is significantly lower, but not in relation to some of the items like local television, Facebook, and Nextdoor. So I would expect to see those social media websites towards the bottom, and really the village should be focusing primarily on those email updates in the Village Connect. When we asked, again, similar to our important satisfaction ratings, we want to understand, which ones are you using, but which ones do you prefer? Which ones should we really invest our time and our efforts in? And again, that's the email updates in the Village Connect, and then the Village website, which tells me that folks want to use that website. They're just not comfortable doing it right now. Either that website's in need of a redesign or it's been redesigned recently. And then making sure that public addresses and news releases are going out to local newspapers in a timely manner is going to be important for at least 1/3 of your residents, it appears. So using these communication means that we know are both most used and most preferred can really help us combat some of the low ratings that we received in the survey, because those items some of those were perception items. Like I said, folks aren't standing at their front door or looking out their window 24/7 to see when that patrol car comes down the street. But if the city puts out a great press release, sends an email update to say, hey, we're responding to the survey results, here's the steps that we're taking, it really goes a long way in most communities. The village, Todd worked on some additional questions this year that weren't in our typical survey instrument. This is the level of willingness by respondents to have the village explore various options. The first one was adopt policies to address rising sea levels. Every single one of these items received very high levels of very willing and willing responses, with very low levels of not willing or not willing at all, with the exception being that bottom one, the elevating road rates in your neighborhood to help alleviate flooding. That one received about 24% of respondents indicating not or not at all willing. But for the most part, folks are supportive of these particular items, although it does appear that in most communities, you're going to have to really vet these programs or vet these ideas a little bit more thoroughly with residents, and just let them understand that this is the plan, and then give those folks opportunities for question and answer to ensure that there's no major drawbacks or no surprises if you ever take these things to a vote. When I mentioned earlier, the village was 25% above the Florida average for the overall value of taxes received. We asked a very lengthy question, basically, do you believe that you're satisfied with the overall value, your portion of property taxes that fund the village's operating budget? And as we can see here, 55% of respondents almost indicated very satisfied and satisfied responses. About 12% weren't sure, and about 18% gave neutral responses. But of those folks who had an opinion, a vast majority of those folks were either neutral or or just regularly satisfied with the overall value that they're receiving there. So that's a really good sign that the village is a good steward of those tax dollars. We also asked respondents how they would rate the way the village has responded so far to the coronavirus pandemic. Overall, we're receiving really good results here. Overall, so far, the village has done a really good job responding, it sounds like. They've also done a very excellent job when it comes to, again, another perception item. So do you have confidence in village leaders to manage your community's needs during the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic? Over 68% of respondents said yes. So the village's response has had a positive impact on residents and should continue to do so moving forward. In summary, the results of the survey are not unexpected. We expect there to be priorities from every survey. Some of the areas and priorities that we had were perception issues, and those are easy to combat because we know what communication methods and means are most effective when wanting to reach out to our residents. Residents have a super positive perception of the village, both as a place to live, a place to play and recreate, a place to raise children, a place to retire, just all those grade card items. You're receiving A's or A pluses in many of those items given our margin of error. You're setting the standard for the delivery of service. And again, I'd like to call out the customer service item to be that far and away above both the national and Florida averages is just outstanding. All of those front-facing employees in your organization should get a huge pat on the back for that particular rating. That is all credit to their ability to really leave those customers smiling, even though it might not have been the most pleasant interaction. Top priorities for the next 2 years is overall quality of beach maintenance. We have those maps to help us point out which areas are most important to focus on that. Adequacy of village street lighting, quality of traffic enforcement, and traffic conditions within the community. All areas where we've seen dramatic increases in satisfaction over the last couple of years and just more needed in order to drop down that importance on those particular items just a little bit more. With that, I'll take any questions that anyone has.
All right, thank you. Councilmember London, you're recognized. Can we go to a view so I can see all the council members? If you could just, yeah, perfect. That way I can see everybody if they raise their hands. Thank you.
Yep.
Go ahead, Ed. You're muted, Ed, which is, okay, I'll unmute you. There you go. It sounded perfect when you're muted. Go ahead.
Thank you for your presentation, Ryan. I missed the beginning of your speech. Was it, you said 500 and some survey respondents, is that correct?
Yeah, sorry, and I'm realizing my video's not on. It won't let me turn it on. Yeah, 512 total responses.
And how many surveys did you send out?
It would have been about 2,500 surveys.
How did you determine who was going to get the survey? Was it random? Was it stratified? Was it random stratified? What did you do?
Yeah, it's random based on the city boundaries.
So basically it's random complete for the entire village.
Yep, we purchase every potential residential address within the village based on USPS database, and then from there we select randomly.
All right, thank you very much. That was my question.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Anybody else? Councilmember Moss.
Some of the stuff that you can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great. Some of the things that you presented, I didn't see in the agenda. I think it was the list that you had with the importance and the different colors. I didn't see it in there. Maybe it is, but I was looking for it. If it's not, are we able to get a copy of that?
Yeah, I'll send, if Todd doesn't have it, I'll send him my presentation. This list is included in section 3, I believe, of the full report. Okay. But I've color coded it and highlighted it differently for my presentation just to make it easy.
That might be why. So I saw that in section 3. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think it'd be great if we could get the presentation. I definitely appreciate it. I think it's important to get this kind of feedback from our residents to let us know where we are. You know, it gives us data points and gives us places to improve. It shows what's working, shows what people are happy with, and shows what's not. Councilmember McCormick, you're muted. There you go.
Thank you. So thank you so much for this presentation and for all of this data, and I will be poring over it over the weeks to come, I'm sure. But I wanted to start with just a general statement for our residents at home. I am very, very encouraged that many of the things that people see as their top priorities, we are either working on or about to work on. The beaches, we've had conversations about what are we going to do about our sargassum problems, and that is the top priority, I believe, for this council. The streetlights, we have a streetlight program that we are moving through, adding additional streetlights. The garbage, I'm not surprised people had issues with, but we have a new vendor, a new contract in place, and hopefully we'll see improvements on that. The website, is one that Todd has really far down the road. So I think that's great. My one question that I have is that you mentioned that there was a lot of concern about sewers, and I'm wondering, I didn't see it in the report, I'm sure it's there, but what the actual question was, because I'm wondering if there was a possibility of people often use interchangeably stormwater and sewer, and I'm wondering if their concern is actual sewer maintenance and effectiveness of removing sewage, or if it's related to stormwater and flooding.
Yeah, so the overall question was quality of sewer / wastewater services, which typically that's how we would probably ask it in most communities, but given, maybe some of the uniqueness of the village, maybe next time we break that out. But even in the capital improvements projects, I'm not seeing it off the top of my list here. Stormwater drainage improvements was listed separately, but the full survey instrument can be found, along with the full tabular results can be found in the report as well.
Okay, thank you. I'll look for it there.
Yeah, that causes me to, excellent presentation, great data, and thank you for that. Before I observe something about the sewage question, the wastewater question, do you have an insight on that particular response in as much as we don't provide wastewater services? It's not a municipal service of our
but they don't know that. I mean, there's not that it's municipal service. I think when you're asking people a question like that, they have no idea what services. I mean, people think I shut down the beaches.
Usually you do.
Well, that's true. I try to. That's my swimming in the water creates a water quality problem. But I think that's the issue. I think they have frankly, it's difficult for some people to parse out which is our responsibility and which is not.
I took it as the septic issue.
Well,
getting everybody off septic.
I actually took it the way I think Councilmember McCormick might have taken it, in that it was about the flooding and people that way. I don't know. I'm not sure. I think it would be a good question to get broken down a little bit more going into the future. I mean, we're going to be taking some steps shortly to address the flooding issues. And I think, that's something, but go ahead, Councilmember Kaplan.
Yeah, I mean, one point of analysis is, you live in a community and maybe it's less important which jurisdiction provides services that affect where you live. In the time horizon that this survey addressed, there were water quality issues in the bay and in the ocean that were rather dire. They got a lot of headlines. So it's possible that that's something that residents reacted to. How did we do compared to Florida on COVID response? Do you have that data?
No, we do have a few benchmarks. The way that the questions were formatted here, I don't believe we included the benchmarking, but let me get that to Todd if we have it. I'll look up any COVID benchmarks that we have and I'll send those to Todd directly.
Okay. In the communications area, one of the line items caught my eye that had to do with civic engagement. Mm-hmm. Do you know what that question asked, or what the reality behind that question was intended to be?
This is a particular question that you're referencing in the communications section?
It fell as a positive that people cared about in kind of the middle of the stack, in the vertical stack of important issues, in the communications area.
Let me see here.
I don't want to waste everybody's time with this, but if you have an insight on what that meant, what the actual question was, or I suppose I could find the question.
Yeah, so it was asking respondents to rate their level of satisfaction with the civic engagement experience with the village, online options for conducting business, overall effectiveness of village communication. The civic engagement experience with the village, 60 or 58% of respondents said they were satisfied. Only 7% said it was important to them. So it fell towards the bottom of that list primarily because it's not overly important, and almost 6 out of 10 respondents gave satisfied ratings. So What that means to the village specifically would be more so, a question for Todd and how, he and his team and administrative staff would view that particular mark.
Maybe last question for me. Maybe one observation and then I'll close. I didn't see it anywhere, and I expected to, which is the noise associated with leaf blowers and the persistence of the experience of dealing with lawn maintenance all day, every day, without a break. Yeah. Did that come up?
I don't think we have anything related to noise ordinances or noise and specifically maintenance, but something that would be easily added for the next survey. If you're hearing that from constituents, that's an issue. Definitely something we can add easily.
I don't know for the community. I don't know whether the time within which this was done and, police COVID response staffing might have something to do with visibility. I was surprised about that particular statistic, but that could be COVID related. Yeah. And then last observation, we did pretty well on culture and arts. People appreciate what we're doing. And then the point about landscaping and the beautification stuff. So speaking
use of tax dollars.
Yeah. So I think we're validated in things that we assume, but it's always good to test the premise and know that we're not delusional.
Yeah. And as I mentioned earlier, Todd crafted some, questions that were just poignant for the time that the survey was being administered in. So anytime we want more input or want a couple extra questions here or there or some changes to wording to help really sum up and give us a little bit better research data, something really to stand on, we're more than happy to make edits to the survey instrument before it goes out next time.
This exercise in your report will help us do that. I think we're all sensitized to questions that could be tailored to our local conditions more precisely.
Yeah.
Ryan, I had a quick question. How many people responded in 2018?
If you give me just a couple minutes, I can definitely find out. I think it was about 540.
I was just curious if it was a big change because of COVID or not, like the participation. But you don't have to answer it now. You can shoot it over to Todd. He can send it to us. It's fine.
Yeah.
I was just curious. Sounds like it was very close to the same.
Yeah. What's funny is that.
Sorry, Brett. What was that question?
It was 549 last time.
549. I asked how many people responded back in 2018 to the survey versus 2020.
And one of the things about communities where we survey frequently, so
the
we
numbers that we got of the respondents.
We couldn't hear you, Allison.
Having issues with that.
Your internet was
Sorry.
choppy.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Yeah, it's like the black hole of internet.
Okay.
So my question was, the number that you gave us for the total respondents, was that the number that you used to get your appropriate sampling, or was that the total number of actual responses?
Responses.
You said there was some you didn't use.
Oh, well, if somebody put in a fraudulent address or tried to take the survey multiple times, those folks are included in the final sampling database. But that doesn't happen in 99% of the communities.
No, maybe I misunderstood you. That wasn't what I meant.
Yeah,
what I was wondering, I thought that I heard you say that in order to get it statistically accurate, you take a certain number from each kind of breakdown geographically and whatever else you use, but that perhaps people shared the link and you got in excess of that appropriate distribution. No. So you used the number you gave with your total responses.
512 total responses from randomly selected households.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate the information.
Thanks, Todd.
The next item, Mr. Mayor, is the consent agenda.
Moved. And all those in favor?
Aye.
There's just one thing. I had asked the clerk to make a clarification on the minutes. I don't know. Jocelyn, did you get my email?
Yes, I did. I have your email.
What was the clarification?
That you requested from the interim manager a report at the next meeting, next regular council meeting, of the cost of COVID-19 testing to the village to date, with a time breakdown along with freebie ridership numbers from before and after the declaration of the COVID emergency.
It's at the bottom of page 2 of the minutes, I believe. The paragraph.
That's where you want to put, council director manager report on the status of the COVID testing and the testing. Oh, and you wanted costs. Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. Anybody have any issue with that?
No.
Okay. Let's move on. Let's vote.
All those in favor of the consent agenda?
Aye.
Aye.
Good. Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay. Next item.
Okay. The next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance on.
No, it's not. It's a resolution of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, you're right. I'm sorry. My apologies.
No worries.
It's a resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, confirming emergency expenditures relating to the novel coronavirus COVID-19, providing for ratification and providing for an effective date.
Moved. Okay. Mr. Manager.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council.
Okay.
In response to the request, if you look at the additional cost from January 4 till today's date, it was $20,379.14. That was all staffing. It was all part-time staffing, and it included no overtime. There was no overtime that was COVID generated. This includes front desk staff, athletic staff setting up and monitoring all of our athletic programs, special events like last Friday's Movies on the Green, that was COVID spaced out and roped out, assisting Roxy with her senior programs, delivering lunches, etc., check-ins and COVID-19 screening at the center and City Hall, lifeguard screening at the pool, cleaning the Village Green bathrooms hourly, cleaning weight room after every session so that it's clean for COVID, and doing the park patrol and handing out the masks. So that is the reason for the costs that were generated from January 4th to date.
Okay. And to be clear, we're going to seek reimbursement for those as COVID related?
For everything, yes, sir, we
Perfect.
are. Everything has been documented, and it will be pushed out to FEMA for reimbursement.
Okay. Anybody have questions about that?
No.
Okay.
In addition, to speak on freebie that the councilman asked for. Last year in 2019, from January 1 to 12/31, we completed 47,832 rides for a total of 72,135 passengers, an average driver rating of 4.89. If you compare that to this year, we've completed only 32,340 rides, total passengers of 44,900, and an average driver rating still right among the same thing at 4.91. But to speak on Councilmember Segarola directly, if you look at January 19 of 20 and you compare it to last year, we were just beginning to go into COVID. So we went from 6,500 to 4,300. And then in February from 6,600 to 4,300, and then dramatically dropped in March to 2,076 riders, April, 1,000 riders, May, 1,200 riders, started picking up again in June. So we were at 39% of our 2019 total in June. When we hit July, we were up to 44% ridership compared to 2019, 54% in August, 57% in September. October was 62, 67 in November, and we're up to 72% of the ridership in 2020 compared to 2019. So it is clear and obvious that we took a huge hit on ridership when COVID hit, but it is slowly but surely looks like about between 5 and 3% each month increments on the uptick.
Chief, just a question.
Yes, sir.
Has the monthly expense for the freebie gone up and down with the ridership, or has it been constant throughout the last 12, 14 months?
Sir, I couldn't give you the exact numbers on that because I don't have that in front of me, but if I could ask Roland to comment on that if he has it, and if we don't have that, we'll get that to you ASAP because we've got to have those numbers somewhere. Roland?
Okay. Yeah, Councilmember Segarola, I don't have the numbers at my disposal right now, but I can tell you that we kept the same number of vehicles on the road. We just shifted from carrying passengers to doing deliveries to support the senior citizens and other members of the community that could benefit from the delivery service.
Right, I understand that, but the reduced ridership, I'm assuming, includes those support services, correct?
No, I don't.
Or is that a separate list of numbers?
It operates really by number of vehicles on the road per day per hour. And as far as I could tell from speaking with Jason, all through COVID, we maintained the same number of vehicles on the road per day, just doing different things than delivering passengers. Now, in a certain number of cases, there was passenger movement. Once we got COVID-related procedures in place to keep people safe and stuff like that. So initially, when the ridership was at its lowest, the delivery service was at its highest, and then the delivery service gradually tapered down as passenger service tapered up.
Okay, that's exactly my question. The delivery services, that's a different set of numbers from the ridership numbers that you just presented us with.
I'm not sure. I'd have to talk to Jason to see if they track deliveries versus passengers.
Yeah, we'll get those numbers for you because I'm not quite sure how they're describing those exact numbers to whether it's lunches delivered and we had people in there or whether people were actually still trying to ride around. But I'll get that to the entire council.
Right, because if it's lunches delivered or whatever, and we're helping the businesses, I can recognize that. I just want a clarification. Is each lunch delivered counted as a passenger, or is that a whole different set of numbers?
They'll find that out for you. We need to vote on the resolution that's sitting before us. No, hold on. We'll go back to. We can go back, but what we have is a resolution. The chief kind of jumped in on something. I want to get this resolution done. Then we'll go back to the ridership on the freebie. Can you call the question, please?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay. Councilmember McCormick, you wanted to say? I'm sorry, Councilmember Segarola, were you done?
Just one other question. I don't know, Chief, if you want to address the issue of the cost of the COVID testing now, or were you planning on doing some other time in the meeting, maybe a manager's report? I don't know.
On the actual COVID testing?
Yeah, the other part of the information that I requested of what the cost of the COVID testing was to the village over the last year or so.
Sir, I am not prepared to do that at all.
I can jump in on that.
But
Councilmember Segarola, in regards to the testing that was done that's being done through the drive-through.
Wait a minute. Is that the issue that was before us on this, or is this just expenditure? Okay, for Corona. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, in regards to the drive-through testing that happens twice a week, that is at no cost to the village. In regards to the curative kiosk that is on the Village Green and the curative van that is in Calusa Park, that too is at no cost to the village.
Okay, the curative, when did curative begin, if I may ask? I think it was December or January?
Yeah, it was around that time frame.
Okay, and I believe I saw in the report that through the curative kiosk, over 5,700 people have been tested through January 15th?
Yeah, it's very possible. They've been testing around 200 to 320 people per day.
Okay, now the testing that was being done through the drive-through with the help of the foundation. Now,
yes.
I understand now you're telling me there is no cost to the village today with that, correct?
That's correct, yep.
But in the past, the village was reimbursing the foundation or whatever group was actually administering the testing on a per capita basis if they qualified certain criteria, correct?
Yeah, but I believe that there was a reimbursement for that.
Well, right. Okay. Well, first things first. When did the village stop reimbursing for that cost through the drive-through?
If I remember correctly, it was around June.
So since June, all that testing has been free to the village?
Yes.
Because I thought it,
not free. You had to pay for it if you went for it.
Well,
I mean, at the drive-through, they didn't take insurance. So at the drive-through, it went to self-pay.
Right.
But it wasn't costing the village, the municipal village. It wasn't costing us. It was self-pay by the people who chose to use the drive-through. Then beyond that, with the curative guys, they take insurance or it's paid for by Curative Foundation or CARES Act money that the curative people take care of. So no transaction is made at the kiosk or at the van.
Correct, but I remember Manager Aga telling us up to the last meeting that she participated in, that the village was evaluating the testing that was being done through the drive-through with Foundation to determine which test would be reimbursable to whoever was paying for it, that the village would pay for. I know I remember that. I don't think I'm gone crazy.
I can tell you, I did the drive-through. I paid for it. I mean, the village was not paying for anybody doing the drive-through.
Okay. So did the village pay for anyone going through the drive-through?
I don't remember.
Allison, you're really breaking up.
Saying that she might have, but it is my. Is it any better?
That's a little better.
Any better?
Little.
All right, hold on. Let me try.
Folks, I could clear this up really easy by next couple days and get you all whatever number.
That's fine if for the next meeting. I don't want to hold everything up.
Well, no. Let's just get this cleared up. I mean,
Ignacio, can you hear me now?
Right.
It's my recollection. I'm turning my video off. Does that help?
Yes.
It's my recollection that we decided as a council to stop fronting the money for those drive-through testing and to switch for a pay-for-service option. Right. And that has been the only support the village has given is space. And maybe, I don't even know, I would imagine it's possible a little bit of staff if they need it for, I don't know, moving cones or being in the garage, but that otherwise it has been sustained by the people paying for themselves, and then the individuals have the option to submit for.
I have that same recollection. I have that same recollection. My question is just, when did the village stop reimbursing, and how much in the end did that project cost the village? Those are my two questions.
All right. Well, why don't we have the manager just get us those numbers, and you'll have that. I mean, we know that the program was cut off in June. We haven't been paying, so why don't we do that? Is that okay?
Okay, that's fine.
Right. Perfect.
The next item, Mr. Mayor, is the first reading of ordinance of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, amending ordinance number 2020-04, which adopted the budget for fiscal year 2020-2021 by revising the 2020-2021 fiscal year budget, providing for implementation, and providing for an effective date.
Moved.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Manager. You're still muted.
Right.
There you go.
Recommending you approve on first reading the attached ordinance amending the FY 2021 budget to reappropriate prior year's estimated surplus to fund the following: the completion of projects that were budgeted and commenced but not completed in the prior fiscal year, and increases in project costs for council approved changes to scope. The proposed line item modifications are described below and summarized in Exhibit A. And I'm going to turn this presentation over to Benjamin Nussbaum, who is going to give you an overall view and then leave it out for individual questions if we would like to do that. I would also suggest that there are a lot of items on this exhibit, and this is only the first reading. So regardless of how we see this, if we have to make changes, we have 2 weeks to make those changes if it is approved on first reading. So Benjamin, please take over from here.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. Benjamin Nussbaum, Chief Financial Officer. As Chief Press mentioned, the ordinance before you tonight on first reading is to amend the fiscal year 21 budget to reappropriate the surplus for those projects that started but were not completed. Just a general overview of our background of where we are today. The assigned working capital surplus fund balance at the end of fiscal year 20 is projected to be around $8 million. At the end of fiscal year 20, the operations are estimated to result in a net surplus of approximately $1.9 million. Of the $1.9 million, we're recommending replenishing the committed emergency reserve fund balance using $620,000 to bring it back to its $4 million level. The reason for this is going into any year or any hurricane season, we always want to have that $4 million in our committed emergency reserve fund balance. From the remaining $1.3 million, staff is proposing to reappropriate $861,000 into the fiscal year 21 budget for the projects and programs that started but were not completed in the prior year. The detail of those projects are in Exhibit A at a departmental level. The remaining $430,000 will increase our assigned working capital fund balance. If I jump ahead to our capital improvements fund, the fund balance for the CIP fund at the beginning of fiscal year 1920 was $2.3 million. At the end of fiscal year 20, the operations are estimated to result in a net surplus of $892,000 for a total fund balance of $3 million at the beginning of fiscal year 21. During fiscal year 20, the CIP fund received $1.7 million in revenue from grants and transfers from the general fund. Although we originally had estimated loan proceeds in the amount of $2.75 million required to support the CIP, debt was not issued during fiscal year 20. Additionally, reimbursement-based grants had not been received for projects that were in progress at year end. Therefore, in order to support this carry forward amendment, we would need $1.75 million of loan proceeds. Staff is recommending the reappropriation of $5.6 million for projects that were in progress at year end and an additional $547,000 to support council approved changes to capital projects. In Exhibit A, we go at the fund level to describe all the projects that have any amendments. Additionally, I'd like to point out an additional $300,000 transfer from the Stormwater Fund to the CIP Fund, which will support the village-wide survey that will provide data for utility undergrounding, stormwater infrastructure improvements, and complete streets. The reason we take this money from the Stormwater Fund is consistent with our financial policy of using our most restrictive funds first before using general fund dollars that will impact our millage. I'd like to thank Tom Foster for his help in presenting this item. I'm also available to answer any questions, and our operational directors are also available to go into detail on any single project or ask to justify the item.
Apologies, I was muted. Does anybody have any questions? Again, this is first reading. Chad, should I open this for public comments?
You can if you want.
Let's just, in abundance, because this is a budgetary issue, I think we should. Is there anybody who would like to speak on this issue, Pete?
There is no one signed up to speak.
Okay. Councilmember Kaplan, and then Councilmember Segarola, and then Councilmember Moss.
I'll limit my comments to maybe just a couple of points. The first is I'm just curious as to how the $4 million became reduced. What happened to do that?
So the $600,000 reduction is a result of both labor and also PP&E as it relates to the COVID-19 expenditures. We are going to be replenishing that amount of money first, but we are also pursuing reimbursement with the county, Miami-Dade County, for the CARES Act, also with FEMA, and also, following the new federal administration to see if there will be direct aid that comes to local municipalities. I'm happy to report we recently got approved already for about $500,000 from Miami-Dade County for our portion of the CARES Act. So at this time next year, we'll probably have a surplus considering we already replenished from other sources.
Mm-hmm. Good. One of the items that's coming up later this evening is beach renourishment. And I noticed in both from speaking with Roland and also in the presentation that the allocation or the award for this project will enable us to put down on the beach a lesser quantity of sand than we had originally projected doing so, because of, I guess this is Irma and the tropical storm recovery for her replenishment for responding to those storm events. So that raised the question of whether, if we have the ability to put down another 8,000 yards, is that a meaningful amount of sand? And should we include something in this ordinance next week or 2 weeks from now to pay for that amount of money that won't be compensated by FEMA? That's a question for maybe late. It's going to come up when we discuss the beach renourishment, but this is where we would deal with that solution if we think that's a good idea. Last two questions for you, sir. The solar panels at Mast, where'd that come from? And the library improvements, what are we doing? Did council make a decision on library improvements last term?
I don't know what we've done on the library since the.
I can address that.
Okay, Chad, you want to talk to that?
So the library has been held in abeyance pending the county's lawsuit.
Deck action.
That they filed. So, and I actually followed up with the county attorney's office about 2 weeks ago, and they're still going through that litigation.
I don't know if Alice, who's our EAB liaison? Is that Councilmember McCormick?
Yes.
I can address the solar power.
Okay, go ahead, Todd. Sorry.
We had 3 companies submit to do the solar power. The school board said they not only needed to be a certified vendor, but a certified contractor, which is a much more difficult process. The first company said they would do it. We gave them some time because it's a lengthy process. They didn't complete the process. So then we went to the second vendor. They said they would do it. They began the process, found it too arduous, and weren't able to complete the process. The third vendor is already an approved vendor through their joint purchasing agreement. So they submitted a proposal today. We're meeting on Thursday to review the proposal, and we should be able to get this completed this fiscal year.
Where did the project come from? This isn't part of our cost.
Let Councilmember McCormick speak to this.
So I'll speak about it because I remember it wasn't actually through the Education Advisory Board. No,
okay, sorry.
This was a student-run initiative from a group at Mast called the Green Champions, which are an environmental group that are really leading kids around the country in the initiatives that they're taking. They have pushed the superintendent to start switching the fleet to electric vehicles. They've gotten big press on that, and they came before us as a community group and had a proposal that we help to install solar panels on the bathroom facility at the playing fields to use the solar power to offset the cost of the electric bill that the village is solely responsible for on the playing fields and that bathroom concession building. So it was their idea, but it was we felt as a council when we voted on it, I believe, at least I did, that we supported this idea because it was in line with our goals as a community to be more sustainable and to switch to solar power. It offset our own costs for the electric bill. And in the end, we did not even approve the total cost for the project. And I believe at the time, the group, I haven't heard an update, but the Green Champions were seeking alternative funds themselves to try to complete the project the way they saw that it should be done. And Todd has been working with the school district to execute. I hope that helps.
Thank you for the explanation. I support it. I just didn't know where it came from. That's great. Thanks.
Any other questions? And remember, we're going to have, if you do have issues, if you'd like to go through it with staff, I strongly recommend it. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Segarola, you're next.
Yeah. I don't have issues. I just have questions, and I will go through with staff, but I want to ask them during the meeting because I think we should discuss it as a council.
Okay.
I'll go through. I guess starting with the first page, I'll go page by page. With regard to the advisory board, the $165,000. I know I'm going to sound like a broken record, but given the fact that we're still trying to figure out what's going to happen with the strategic vision plan and all the other things we have in the air at the same time, is now the time to budget the $165,000 for the strategic vision plan, or to push that off for next year? That's number one. Number two. Well, this is going to go with regard to public works, $290,000 for the village-wide landscaping projects. I'm all for the landscaping projects. I don't have a problem with it. I definitely think we need beautification. I was the liaison for the Village Beautification Board, but sort of segueing into another item, the irrigation ordinance that's going to be considered soon. Does this $290,000 consider landscaping that is basically drought resistant, which seems to be what the direction that we're going into? Has this already been finalized, I guess is my question. Next one.
I'm sorry, are you asking a question about the plant selections?
Yes.
Well, yes.
Because of the irrigation ordinance and the goal of moving toward a more drought resistant product.
Right.
Yeah. So next question.
Next one. With regard to public safety, the $750,000 for the fire truck. Didn't we already vote to buy the fire truck last year? That was my question.
Okay.
The $300,000 for the replacement of the 8 vehicles. Under Manager Aga, I thought we had already enrolled in a plan to routinely, to have a constant cost over year to year to routinely switch over our fleet. Is this part of that plan, or is this something separate? Quality of life, the $587,000 for the green bike lanes. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chief Press, but didn't you a few weeks ago, I thought I had seen an email that you were recommending we not do that anymore because the cost had ballooned.
Yes, sir.
So if that's the case, why are we, asking for $587,000? So same thing with $370,000 for the village center redesign parking. Oh no, I'm sorry, scratch that. That's not part of that. And finally, the $1 million for the quality of life for the community center second expansion project. If I remember correctly, I think the last time we discussed this was approximately November 2019, where we had a presentation about potential expansion and plans and all that. Of course, we were shortly thereafter hit with coronavirus. Since we have no idea what's going to happen with the coronavirus and continued social distancing for the foreseeable future, being 1, 2, 3 years out, is now the time to be spending $1 million for an expansion of the community center, where it's not being utilized today, let alone who knows in a year, if the capacity is going to be, if the use is going to be the same. So I guess those are all my questions.
Okay. I mean, the 165, we voted for it. We want to get moving with the strategic vision plan. I mean, if you want to make a motion to pull that off, Chad, I don't know how that works, given that we've had a vote to approve this. I would certainly defend
I think
that.
we may even have them under contract already. I don't know what we're talking about. All we're doing is moving what wasn't spent last year to this year, just so that it's continued. We're not adding anything from a millage standpoint or anything we're bringing in.
Correct, but I'm just saying, can we move it, leave it in the reserve
starting.
As opposed to, no, I'm not talking about this particular point. Okay, You say we're under contract. I didn't know that. Okay, if we're under contract, we're under contract. But the funds in general, instead of allocate them to these things, if they're not necessary today, can we just leave them in general funds or some other placeholder for the future?
That's the point. Yeah, if you're making a motion, that's my point. If you're making a motion on these, let's discuss them. I would like to hear back from the manager. And if we're not ready to do that again, these are the points that can be brought back at the next meeting, or we can do this now. Mr. Manager, what is your inclination on this?
So we are prepared to speak on some of these things. I would ask Jake to talk about whether or not he's discussed the plants and whether they are drought-resistant plants. That would be something for Jake to bring up. Regarding our public safety vehicles, yes, you're absolutely right. And because of the work that Benjamin has done in taking a look at our debt service and making those wonderful changes, saving us $750,000. And yes, there was a policy that council voted for that created an ISF that would involve the village putting $300,000 a year into that ISF to maintain all of their fleet, the entire fleet throughout from here until hell freezes over. So we are prepared to speak on that if you would like us to. And the $1 million is something that I had my own thoughts about. We are looking at a major cost for adding that expansion down the road. We do have a lot else going on, but the community center has always been right on the front lines of our entire village and what makes us click and what brings us together. So it's something for you all to decide whether you want to at least create the plans. Right. The only thing I would say, Mr. Mayor, on that is, we've gone through 10 years of redesigns at 530 Crandon. And the costs that have been involved in those redesigns is probably close to $1 million right now, and we haven't put a shovel in the ground. So if we're looking at $1 million, and as Councilmember Cigarroa pointed out, under COVID, we really don't know where we're going to be at least in the next year, and most likely in the next 2 years until we come back to some type of full-time norm and a huge use. Do we really want to appropriate those funds right now? And that's my thoughts on that. So we're ready to talk, Benjamin. If you would speak out.
Okay, hold on a second. Let's. Does anybody else have items they want to put on this list to discuss tonight, or do you want to bring back things? Okay. All right, then let's go through them. Councilmember Cigarrola, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I just want to jump in. Chief Press, I would much rather spend whatever money we're going to spend on finishing 530 and just getting that done with than to start down the path of a civic community center expansion we may or may not need, depending on what
there's already money for 530 Crandon in this.
Right, but I'd rather just that's an open air park that people can actually enjoy today, and I'd rather dedicate the money and have special meetings, whatever it is we need to do to get that done. It's been dragging on now, 10,
we can do years? Both. You've got 1.186 for the 530 Crandon, and then you've got the $1 million toward the community center.
We don't need to do the second one because we don't know where we're going to be in a year. If the community center can't be used today at its full capacity, right, it most likely will not be able to be used a year from now at its full capacity.
So would this be the time to be doing the work?
No, because we don't know what full capacity is going to mean 1 or 2 years from now. We may be paying money for a plan that can never be implemented.
All right, let's just go through these items then. If nobody else has any. I'm sorry, Councilmember Moss.
Yeah, just really quick. The Safe Routes to School. I saw you had $1 million there. Now, did FDOT they already reimbursed us this back, or we haven't received it in 2020, and that's why you need to bring it over to 2021, or we did receive it in 2020, and that's why we have to carry it over?
My recollection is we did receive it, and that's why we started the program already. But I would ask Jake to comment on that.
Hold on. Let the Councilmember Moss finish.
No, and then just a response to what Councilmember Cigarrola was saying is that, we're halfway through the budget year right now. The easy thing to do is just bring what we budgeted before, bring it into this year so that we have what we approved. And then in 6 months, when we're back at the board, we can start making these decisions. If a project doesn't happen, which it may not happen, these are earmarks in some way, we can make those decisions. If something comes up in 3 months from now, we can bring back an amendment and we can move that money to a specific project. But for me to go back through the whole budgeting process again in the middle of the year, I think we should focus on other things. And when the budget process, I mean, we're going to start the budgeting process in a couple of months anyways. So I think we can go through that at that point, but I don't know if we need to make these big decisions right now. You know, I don't think it really makes a difference.
Okay. Anybody else want to add anything to the list to be discussed right now? Councilmember McCormick, you're recognized.
No, I don't have anything for this list. I have a related to this topic, but not a list question like that. I can wait.
Okay.
Are we going through this list now?
Well, we're going through the items that Councilmember Segarola brought up so that we can get some clarification from staff.
I'll wait till that's over.
Perfect.
Please
Go ahead,
don't forget me.
I will not forget. How could I forget you?
Thank you.
Go ahead, Jake.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, Manager. I'll try to answer Safe Routes to School as well as landscape items. Now, Safe Routes to Schools project, we have not received any.
Well, let's start, Jake. Let's just go down the list as they're defined. Okay, advisory boards 165 for the urban planner strategic vision plan. I think that's self-explanatory. I think Councilmember Moss spoke to that. The next item would be $290,000 for village-wide landscaping projects. I think Councilmember Segarola's question was, are we taking into account the proposed ordinance, the irrigation ordinance, and in fact, the existing countywide ordinance, which requires more drought, recommendations that there are more drought-resistant plants being placed in the landscaping projects on Crandon Boulevard, Harbor Drive, and West Mashta Drive.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. Our new design meets or exceeds the irrigation requirements. And we met with Beautification Board. We met with Dr. Samimi, our Chief Resiliency Officer, and our horticulturalist, Carlos Sanchez. When we did the plant selection, these plants are resilient. At the same time, still keeps the Key Biscayne theme going. And again, they are in compliance with our irrigation ordinance and county's ordinance in place.
Okay. Now we go to, I guess we'll keep with you. So the Safe Routes to School.
Safe Routes to Schools is, we have to carry forward this money because we budgeted this expenditure and we also budgeted revenue. And so it's going to be wash at the end. And we're going to have to expend these monies. And as we go, we pay invoices and then we get reimbursed from FDOT. So.
Okay. And the next item would be the bike lanes. I think this is, again, remember, we're just budgeting items. I tend to agree with you on the bike lane issue. Frankly, we've got to figure out why the price of paint went from $30 a square yard to $90. Was it square yard or square foot, whatever it was? Square yard. So we've got, I think we all agreed on 300,000. I'm not so much sure that we want to spend $800,000 on this. So again, this is for budgeting for items that we've either approved. Well, it's all approved, correct? All these items have been approved previously by council. We're just putting money toward them, correct? Benjamin?
That's correct. That's one of the few, the green lanes is one of the few that was appropriated, but the scope of
But it may come back.
Right. I would recommend anything that we do approve in budget tonight, the staff is going to deliver on those items. So I mean,
understood. Well, but this is first reading. Again, we'll come back for another reading if we decide to change. And then the $1 million for the facilities, again, I would argue that we should be looking to see, and so that's a discussion item, Councilmember Segarola, we've got to have as a council and decide what do we want to do. But I think putting the money aside at this point to have that discussion, I would rather have the money budgeted than say, oh, we don't have the money and we can't do anything.
I don't see why can't we just have the discussion, and if we conclude that now's not the time, we just don't put the money aside for it. It's because the problem is if you allocate it, there's a tendency it's going to get spent. And I would I would prefer to save the money.
But that's not true.
Just like Benjamin said, and Benjamin, I know your head just popped up. I don't mean to get you on the spot, but just like Benjamin said, whatever the council approves in this ordinance, the administration will start turning the wheels to make it happen. So I'd rather give the clear message now, this is not necessary now. Let's save the $1 million for ourselves, for the village, and for the taxpayers.
Well,
Councilmember Kaplan, go ahead.
First a question and then maybe an observation. are we paying the green lanes solely all by ourselves?
No.
We're paying 2/3.
We're supposed to pay 2/3. We're supposed to pay 2/3 of the 300,000. We were going to pay 200,000, and we're getting 100,000 from the state. Yeah, they're not giving us a third of the price.
Right. And then it blew up to 800 something thousand. We're still only getting 100,000 from the state. So now we got to come up with 700 something.
That's right. No, that's exactly right. No, on
All
that
right,
one.
So I got to catch up with this issue, but I just would observe that the green lanes made a very positive difference when they came in. It really took a situation that was dangerous and a point of flashpoint conflict and improved it.
I just feel like we're getting stuck because somebody decided you have to use a specific green paint to paint the lanes.
It feels like a bait and switch.
They trebled the price.
I hear you.
So I think we need to, I have no problem bringing that back for reconsideration at some point to just discuss after we've done some investigation.
I just wanted to observe the
positive. I understand. There's definitely positives to the green lanes. I'm 100%, we had a conversation here and Councilmember Laredo was opposed at the time. And I think a bunch of us, we voted for it. But at that time, the price was 300,000, not 800,000. So,
and my concern on that one would be that all of the sudden somebody knew someone or something, and you have to use this specific brand that's so much more expensive. And I wonder if we wait, is there a chance that, that friend relationship goes away and all of a sudden we can use the less expensive, equally as good product?
Right.
And I would hate to pay more now just because. I agree with you.
No,
And I am very much in support of the green bike lane, and I do not think it's going to bring the Peloton down Crandon Boulevard.
That was Jake, were you going to speak? Sorry, go ahead, Councilman.
That's right. No, I'm not in support of overpaying for it.
Right. Councilor Jake?
Yeah, I just want to provide a quick background on the benefit of some of the council members who weren't here last time. Initially, when we estimated this project, we used the actual bid numbers from City of Doral that they did this job in 2018. And the price for square yard they paid was like $30.25. And we kind of used that number to an estimate. And I believe I used $35 and put about 12-13% contingency. 2 years fast forward, DOT dropped a couple of the products out there and they left it only one. And then that project, actually that's the one that county was doing, Rickenbacker Causeway. All of a sudden their price jumped from roughly $30 and change to $90 and change for square yard. That was one of the reasons that job came to hold for a brief moment. And I spoke with FDOT, and there are some vendors out there that reached out to us and they're telling us that they are in process of getting approvals from FDOT. So it's like a moving target. And what we'll do is we'll advertise this job and we bid this job, and we're going to put the bid documents that we will consider some of the paint products contingent upon them getting their product approved before the Department of Transportation. So we can put the burden on them and reduce the cost that way. And one other option would be reducing the project limit. So we may not have to go all the way down State Park. Perhaps we cut it down at South Mashta maybe, so to save some cost on the length of the project. Mashta. Right, West Mashta, I'm sorry. So there are some options that we could do base bid to see what the prices are, and then you could make a better decision at that time.
All right. Well, that's an item we're going to have to come back for discussion. This is just a budgeting item. So, where are we? Are we gonna move forward, or are we gonna? What do we want to do?
Well, my observation is
okay. Hold on. Councilmember McCormick, and then Councilmember Kaplan.
Jake, based on what you just told me, here's what I'm hearing: that you would like to continue to bid this, and when we get to a point where we have a product that is an acceptable price for us, you want to be ready to go. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. If that's the council's bill, right?
Okay. So,
I'm sorry.
In that case, I'd be okay with budgeting our previously appropriated amount, not the increase. And then if Jake doesn't get the right price, he can't do the project because the funds aren't budgeted.
That's fine. Councilmember Moss and then Councilmember Segurola.
I was just going to make a motion that we go ahead and pass this on first reading.
Well, we've already done. It's already been moved.
But no, just call a question. I don't know. Whatever you want to do.
I mean,
I don't know how you move it to the next part.
Right. Councilmember Segurola, you had a comment?
Allison, just to clarify, your proposal is to budget the 200,000 that we did before, not the new amount, correct?
Yes.
I'm for that with that line item.
Okay, so
well, let me just ask Jake, is that, given the fact that we're a few years out from when you first figured out what your first estimates, is that still a reasonable amount? I mean, is a reasonable amount a little bit more? I'm just not interested in this gouging of the you only can use this one type of expensive paint, which, by the way, you can see where that expensive paint started and stopped, and it's not even as nice a product, in my opinion. It looks dirty. And
I agree. I agree.
Is that the previously budgeted amount? Do you think that's a realistic, cheaper number, or do we need a little more?
We need a little bit more because we have to take the inflation into account and everything else. $300,000 may not cut it, and I would say a little more. Maybe, to be realistic, I would feel a lot better with $400,000, given everything into account that there are not many products available out there. Yes, so you have a good point. Perhaps $400,000.
I mean, is there any reason for us to be changing? You know, I don't want to be voting on independent items right now, to be frank. I think we should move this along. And then if we, leave the funding at the level we approved. And then if Jake needs to come back to us at a different time, we'll have money in the general fund that we can put forward toward that project. I don't want to get into the micro right now.
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Well, my only concern is that we should basically almost be working on the next budget, and we're most likely facing another decrease in ad valorem revenue, if not flat at best.
Why?
Because of the market trends from what I'm seeing.
What are you seeing? I don't know. I just happen to have I'm up to my eyeballs in alligators in terms of retail real estate sales.
From what I'm hearing, 0% increase or decrease to a 1% decrease is the rumor. It's not based on science,
okay.
But the property values are not going up. We're presented with an opportunity to save money now, and we're going to be returning to this discussion very shortly. So why not just do it now?
Okay, Councilmember Kaplan, and then I'm going to call the question.
I think we should call this question.
Okay.
These monies were allocated.
Correct.
We're not all we are doing is moving money that was previously allocated but not spent.
Correct.
The time to discuss whether we want to kill projects is not now.
That's right. All right. Call the question, Madam Clerk.
Roll call. Vice Mayor London?
Yes.
Councilmember McCormick?
Yes.
Councilmember Moss?
Yes.
Councilmember Segurola?
No.
Mayor Davey?
Yes.
Councilmember Kaplan?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Next item.
The second reading for this ordinance will be on February 23rd, 2021.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mike, I had my one comment on that.
Okay, go ahead.
I just would like to say, I just want to point out, and not to stay gnawing on the same bone, but we had a really long discussion at the end of the last budget about adding bonuses and whether or not we needed to increase the millage if there would be carry forward funds. There clearly was, and we did not need to have that, although it was very slight, we did not need to have that millage increase. And the only reason I'm bringing this up is because the 7 of us are about to make a decision to hire a next manager. And I think it is really important, if they're watching, and for us to keep in the forefront of our mind that our next manager should be someone who is willing to say, yes, you're going to have it. I don't know what the pressures were of why we couldn't hear that we would have at least $200,000 to carry forward. It was less than that. But clearly the money was there and the answer was not forthcoming. And I just hope that we remember incidents like that when we're choosing our next manager and that we don't put ourselves in that type of position again. And that's all.
Noted. Thank you. Next item.
But if I may, for clarification, when we bring this back at second reading for those green bike lanes, are we bringing it back at the same cost or at?
Yeah, we approved without amendment.
Okay, thank you.
The next item, Mr. Mayor, is the first reading of an ordinance, a capital project authorizing ordinance of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, selecting Ferraria Construction Southern Division Company, Inc. for the village's beach renourishment maintenance project in an amount not to exceed $1,836,564, providing for authorization and providing for an effective date.
Moved. Second.
I'm sorry, who moved it first?
I moved it. The mayor moved it.
And this seconded?
That was fast.
Kaplan.
Come on, man. Kaplan got second.
Thank you.
Good to be in the top three.
Mayor, Council, I am recommending we execute a contract with Ferraria Construction Southern Division Company, Inc., the lowest responsive and responsible bidder for the 2021 beach renourishment project in an amount not to exceed $1.836 million. This amount includes Ferraria's bid amount of $1.624964 and a contingency amount of $211,600, approximately 13% for unforeseen circumstances. Construction is anticipated to be completed within 30 days after contract execution. Funds are budgeted in the amount of $2,315,000 in fiscal year 21 CIP. This budget is fully funded through FEMA and Florida DEP grants. I'm going to turn it over if you have any questions to Roland.
All right.
Yeah, I'm ready to call the question.
Any public comments?
I got one.
Pete?
No one signed up to speak, sir.
Okay. Councilmember Kaplan?
This is where this is what I was alluding to in the prior item. We had anticipated 32,000 tons. FEMA's approved a little bit less than that. I think if we were to pay for the difference, if that's a meaningful amount of sand in a permitted project, should we do it now? I'm raising the question because this is the end of this permit, if I remember correctly.
Well, but we are 3,200 and they're paying.
Let me jump in if you may. Councilmember Kaplan, the permit that we have allows for a maximum amount of 31,000 cubic yards. FEMA, based on their calculations of loss from Irma, are reimbursing us for a maximum of 23,000 cubic yards. We can legitimately, by our permit, add 8,000 cubic yards if we were to come up with the funds to do so. If we were to add 8,000 cubic yards, you're talking about maybe on average a little bit less than 6 foot difference in terms of berm width over the length of the project. Berm width being sort of like the upper portion of the beach where people sort of recreate and lounge and stuff like that. There is a little bit of a balancing act in the sense that while it is always good to put more sand on the beach from a shoreline protection point of view in mitigating the impacts of future storms, you're also up against the fact that you don't want to have any impacts on seagrass beds as the sand does erode over time.
Why not?
So what's been going on a bit with the seagrass beds is that from the most recent survey, biological survey that was done, it looked like seagrass beds were migrating oceanward and away from the shoreline, which one might think is a good thing. However, it begs the question whether that migration is happening because of sand that was put on the beach and eroded away and therefore pushed the seagrass out, or whether it's something that's naturally occurring and then we benefit from that by virtue of the fact that we could then potentially put more sand on the beach and push further out on the ocean. That's an open-ended question that would come up if we were to push to the maximum amount and then have to monitor it accordingly. So, you know, unfortunately, there isn't a very black and white answer as to whether or not we should cross the maximum amount or not.
Well, I have an observation from reading this together, and maybe we can simplify this. The ordinance provides for 32,000 cubic yard or 32,000 ton
32,200 tons.
The ordinance that we're about to adopt gives us the opportunity to put down that additional 8,000 cubic yards. And the manager just told us that this is a fully funded project. So we can reach that decision, and the ordinance will provide that flexibility. If that additional 8,000 tons is, if I'm speaking apples and apples, tons is a meaningful amount of sand that we should put down now because we're permitted to do so.
What's your recommendation, Dr. Samimi?
Well, we absolutely have to move forward with the contract to put down 23,000 cubic yards, period, the end. That's that has to happen.
Let me ask you this, between now and the second reading, because we have to have a second reading of this ordinance, can you come back to us and say, should we add the additional 8,000?
Yeah, I'd be more comfortable.
And how much and what the cost is. Let's do that.
Sure, I can do that. I can do that, but we absolutely have to move forward at first reading.
We're moving forward. Yeah, there's no question we're moving forward.
Okay.
Councilmember Moss, you had a comment or question?
No, I just wanted to agree with Councilmember Kaplan that I think that we should maximize if we can, as long as it's not negative towards us.
Well, Dr. Samimi will come back to us next reading, provided this passes on first reading. Anybody else have comments before we vote? Okay, call the question.
Okay. Councilmember McCormick?
Yes.
Councilmember Moss?
Yes.
Councilmember Segurola?
Yes.
Mayor Davey?
Yes.
Councilmember Kaplan?
Yes.
Vice Mayor London? Yes. The ordinance is approved on first reading. The second reading will be on February 23rd, 2021.
Okay. Why don't we go to the village manager's report? It's almost 8 o'clock.
Yes.
Give me a second. I'll be right with you guys.
Okay. Or do you want the extra 5 minutes?
For the benefit of the council, I'll just let you know, because the beach project's a capital authorizing ordinance, the clerk is mailing out the postcards pursuant to the charter. So all the electors will be receiving that.
Great. Thank you.
So very quickly, part and parcel to the report, you've already got your community survey, which we discussed earlier. The vaccine update, I know I saw Melissa, and if Melissa is still on, she could speak on where we're at. If she is not on, I will tell you that we currently have approximately 400 plus seniors that are signed up for the vaccine through various entities, including our own, and we're prepared to do those vaccines ourselves. At the same time, Melissa is working with Jackson Health Systems very closely to provide their services and get our people vaccinated. Other than that, as far as us doing it ourselves, the fire department is prepared and your administration is prepared to start immediately once we get those vaccines in the village of Key Biscayne. A small addition to the scope of service, even though they have directed 65 and over, and that mandate has come down from CDC and the state, we are currently looking into some residents that have particular various health items that are extremely serious and would be benefited with that vaccine as quickly as possible. So Melissa is always also looking into that. Sorry about that. Let's go to the PD and the activity report. I sent it out to everybody today. I think you can see that the amount of activity involving a lot of our juvenile issues has been extremely successful in our engagements with not only the juveniles themselves, but something that's changed dramatically is we invite or require that the parents come out in every one of these stops that we make and actually come out, talk to the police officers, engage in the issue. And so this has become not only a warning or a civil citation, but it's also been an educational experience for the parents who have to now engage themselves. In addition to all the statistics that you currently see, we had 288 public nuisance area checks and parking walks. So the PD has been very vigilant, very busy. And this weekend alone, we saw a dramatic reduction in some of these issues that have been paramount to the negativity coming from some of our juveniles. And the federal shoreline feasibility study, Roland's going to talk on that later. Beach renourishment, we already discussed. The water quality, Roland will talk about, and the EV charger program. That is something that keeps coming up. We need a decision by council, but my recommendation right now is that we kind of hold off on this for this reason only. We're talking about two charging spots. We're talking about Fernwood Road. We're currently in the process of doing those parking spaces on Fernwood Road, number one. Number two, we don't have an ordinance that would actually provide for a time limit that somebody could park in there and charge their car. So if somebody had an electric car or cart and they wanted to charge it over there, imagine they'd leave it in there for 12 hours. So I think we need to think into the future how we're going to do this project if we do it, and create some type of a timetable similar to the pay and park that is done in other cities. This will not require payment, but it will be a time limit where we can take some type of action if we have to ensure that all of our residents have that opportunity. That's what I have today. Unless somebody has any particular questions on anything, I'm open.
Councilmember Segurola?
With regard to the vaccination, I have absolutely no problem with doing everything to get ready to begin providing vaccines to our residents. The big unknown there is the availability of the vaccines, when they're going to be available to the village and under what circumstances. It might happen next week. They might not be available for 6 months. If I recall, the last two times that we've discussed this council has never taken an affirmative vote on going ahead and doing this, given the cost of $3,000 a day.
Yes,
All that I'm at, no, we said investigate it, but we didn't say, let's start doing it. The second you get vaccines, we're going to start paying $3,000 a day for the service. So all I'm saying is, before we get to that point, if the manager, the acting manager, or a future manager can come back to the council and say, hey, we have vaccines, we're ready to go, so that we can make a knowledgeable decision if it's worth it. Because if we get these vaccines when everybody's vaccinated, what's the point? But if we get these vaccines early on where it makes an actual difference, that's a very big difference in what's going on. So I just want to clarify. We're getting everything ready. We're signing people up. We're creating a list of priorities, however it is you want to do, have everything in place. But before we start doing it and spending $3,000 a day, I think this council needs to make an actual yay or nay vote on going forward with it, given the circumstances at that time.
Vice Mayor and then Mr. Manager.
$3,000 a day, which I think is absolutely outrageous, and we shouldn't spend that money. We also talked about having the company that's doing the COVID testing do it for 25 hours a person. Someone was supposed to follow up on that to see if that was a possibility. I don't know who's done that.
They're following up on all of them.
So if it's going to do it 25 hours per person, it's much cheaper than 100 hours per person with the fire department.
That's good math.
I'm very good at math, Michael.
That's excellent.
No,
Well
I learned
done.
from you. I'm very good. Anyway. So at this point in time, I'm totally against authorizing.
You said that last time.
I'll say it one more time.
Well, you
And I
know,
know you said money doesn't matter. I understand.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
So lives are important.
Mr. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't want you to.
I don't want to put a price on lives. Are you putting a price on lives, Vice Mayor? Anyway, all right, go back to the manager. Mr. Manager, you want to deal with this?
Yes, sir. Really quick, Mr. Mayor. First of all, that $3,000 anticipated cost was our initial projection, not knowing how this process was going to work. Chief Lang has whittled that down to a much more acceptable cost should we need it.
Okay.
I know that Melissa has also raised her hand. She's going to talk about what she brings to the table. But Roland has also reached out to Curative, and Roland can speak on his discussions with Curative to do the test and the vaccine themselves.
I don't have a problem with any of that. I would just like to be given the choice before it happens than to have a council meeting say, hey, we already started this last week. We've been doing it for X number of days, and here's the bill. That's my point. I would like to choose it before having a bill handed to me.
Let's be clear. Tomorrow, they come in. Somebody from on high, the state says, Chief, Mr. Manager, you are now allowed to have 3,000 doses a week. So we're going to tell our residents that we're not allowing them and it has to be through your fire department.
If that happens, I'm willing to have a snap meeting to discuss that one item.
Why don't we hear what the economic arrangements that have evolved and what Melissa has to say, and then
we'll hear from Melissa.
I don't agree with Ignacio on this point.
Melissa, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you.
Excuse me for not having my video on. I don't feel like I look appropriate.
You always look appropriate.
Regarding the vaccine and doing it through the fire department, Manager Press is correct. Chief Lang has been working on the proposal, and Ed, you'll be happy to know that he got it down from 30 tests a day for the 3,000 up to 96, which I think is about $31.95 per shot. Tell me if I'm right. And
Michael's math is good too.
That was based on 2,500 shots if they were received by the state. I was also informed, and it's my belief, and that this is reimbursable by FEMA. And this brings us back to, I think, Councilmember Segarola's earlier questions regarding testing. The Community Foundation had provided tests back in April and May at the start when testing wasn't widely available. And we did that on our own dime, and later we were able to, and requested by the village too, and under Manager Aga, to reimburse it by the CARES Act, which the county had. And they submitted those reimbursables to the county back in, I believe it was July, and one can correct me if I'm wrong, and that was fully reimbursed by the county as part of the $500,000 that was given back to the village under CARES Act. Currently, all that is being expended by the village is the in-kind location and staff hours of Roxy. With regard to vaccine, we've worked with the fire department on a scenario in which we have EMTs working, medical director, and then the foundation and the community center would provide the administration of the scheduling. We've also reached out to various community partners. Roland has been in touch with Curative, and Curative has a plan in place if they're able to receive vaccine shots before Chief Lang. We've also reached out to Ethos and other partners. So we're doing the best we can. Shots aren't widely available yet. We expect that by the end of the month they will be. In the meantime, we have a list of over 400 seniors. Last week it was over 500. We are now currently scheduled 100 in total, and we're doing the best we can to try to get our seniors vaccination slots. We're working with the community center. The community center has been awesome, both in terms of transportation. Volunteers have been awesome. I think Council Member London's wife will attest to the impact it has on a senior's life. And I'd just like to say that when this is over, we should have a party for all of these seniors that have been quarantined for so long and haven't seen it. They had so much fun on the community center bus. They said, could we just we just get back on the bus just to talk to people and be able to see each other. So it's socially distanced. It's all with masks, and everybody would approve. But to see these people be able to interact with each other, it's amazing, and it's really beautiful. And I have to thank the council and Chief Lang and Manager Press for making this possible, because it makes such a difference in people's lives. And you guys should be really proud of yourselves as a village.
Thank you. Dr. Samimi?
Yeah, I would just like to add, I have been talking with Curative regarding them being able to administer vaccines. We're in the process of having an agreement reviewed by Chad, and
how much?
It's hovering like around $28 a shot, as far as I can tell right now. But again, I mean, it's a moving target.
You said you have an agreement. What's the agreement?
No, I didn't say we have an agreement. We are working on an agreement with Curative to try and get that in place. Should they be able to get vaccines, then we'd have at least something in place to then be able to move forward.
But how much?
Right now, it's hovering around $28 a shot. We haven't actually been able to nail down an exact price.
Okay, thank you.
My point is, either way, let's just have a choice in this, not be handed a bill after the fact.
Okay. Councilman McCormick?
My question is, when we are handed a bill from whomever it is, what is our expectation of reimbursement for these costs, or is this something that we expect we're going to be responsible for?
So the expectation, I'll speak on that. The expectation is any of the costs that we actually generate through manpower, i.e. our fire service, et cetera, or the people who are assisting in the community center, is completely reimbursable. If you all are aware right now, there is a countywide project that's going on that the village is participating in. We did a communications last week where we are helping to identify and provide shots to approximately 3,000 Holocaust survivors in South Florida, with every fire service providing at least one ambulance and 3 persons on those ambulances. These people are all in excess of 90 years of age, and every dollar of that is reimbursable through FEMA. So it has been so far 100%, and I don't anticipate that's going to change.
Great.
I'd also just like to add, for Councilmember London's benefit, with regards to Curative, they're looking to actually charge insurance for the vaccines. In the event that that can't happen, then there'd be a price associated with administering the vaccine.
Okay.
All right. Next item, Chief, or Mr. Manager. Are you done?
That's all I got for now, unless anybody has any additional questions.
That's it. Let's go to the next item. Thank you.
The next item, Mr. Mayor, is a resolution, a capital authorizing resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, authorizing the village manager to issue a work order to SFM Services, Inc. for the village's Crandon Boulevard Landscape and Irrigation Improvements Project in an amount not to exceed $130,000 and providing for an effective date.
Move. Second.
I'm recommending we execute an agreement with SFM Services, Inc. to advance the Crandon Boulevard landscaping and irrigation improvements in an amount not to exceed $130,000. Funding in the amount of $130,000 is proposed to be allocated from the FY20 Public Works carry forward balance, which is approximately $343,000. This proposed allocation is contingent upon council approval, obviously, of the carry forward.
That was a question.
And Jake could speak if you don't want to call.
Only one question. The memo talks in terms of the bid being 128.5, and then a subsequent negotiation that reduced the bid, and then we were at 130, and I just couldn't square the numbers.
That would be not to exceed, Greg.
Yeah, it's not to exceed 130, but the bid is 128.5.
It's just a rounded up.
Okay, let's do it.
All right. Call the question, please.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Next.
The next item, Mr. Mayor, is a resolution of the Village Council of the Village of Key Biscayne, Florida, accepting the Southeast Florida Regional Climate Change Compact's Sea Level Rise Projection Report, providing for utilization of the report where practical and providing for an effective date.
Moved.
Second.
So my recommendation is to accept that report and support its utilization when designing and planning resilient construction where practicable. And Roland can absolutely speak on this.
Yeah, I think that the important aspect of this is that as we move forward with these resilience-oriented projects, whether it's shoreline protection, whether it's roadway improvements, whether it's stormwater infrastructure upgrades, we're ultimately going to have to be designing these plans and projects to boundary conditions. And right now, the region, through the Southeast Florida Regional Climate Change Compact, has essentially aligned itself with these sea level rise projections that are in the report. And I'm just asking that we actually officially accept the report and the projections so that when we move forward with boundary condition determinations, we've got agreement that these are
awesome.
Acceptable.
Great idea. Anybody have an objection to that?
No objection. One request.
Okay.
There's thought provocation. In the use of the report for our resilient construction purposes, could we add, and also for zoning code adaptations, because we will be considering these benchmark numbers in zoning, and I think that would help us remember to do that.
Okay. Any objection to that?
No.
No.
Okay. So amended. Let's move forward. Call the question.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No. And
Motion
I meant to withdraw my last item. We have nothing to report on the managers. We're still looking. I know the everybody's moving forward. I know I'm getting phone calls from folks about the different candidates. I'm sure you all are. Keep doing your homework. I know our consultants. I know Councilmember Laredo's not his favorite word, but they're ready to go. They've sent out some information to our candidates. So everything's progressing. Well done, people.
Mr. Mayor, there was another public comments at the end of the evening.
I'm sorry. I'll call for public comments. You're correct. I apologize. My bad. Anybody up, Pete?
I have nobody signed up for public comment.
Okay.
Do you want
Motion.
to read the instructions?
Okay. Anybody want to, Pete, read the instructions, please.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, watching at home on channel 77 on Comcast and channel 99 on AT&T, or streaming through our website. If you wish to speak on any topic with council, please dial 305-365-7569. Then enter the meeting ID of 231-627-8415. If anyone is currently in the meeting and wish to speak, either dial *9 on your telephone, or if you're using the Zoom app, go ahead and raise your hand.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
There we go. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you all. Good night.